the hum of the day. And what happens here at about 5 a.m. is the roads heat up. Construction stops. It happens in the middle of the night. The roads start getting busy. People arrive. Ticketing gets very busy. And then the first wave of aircraft are off. Cold aircraft are brought on. The second wave leaves. The airfield picks up the pace hours after the roadway picks up the pace. And in the evening, the same thing happens, but only in reverse. And every now and then, from up here, we can see a beautiful sunset, and you see all the changing lights on the airfield. That just has a beauty to itself. But inside the airport, that's when a lot of construction happens. So there's just a choreography and a real hum of busyness through the day.
My name is Elizabeth Leavitt, and when I retired from the port, I was the Senior Director of Engineering, Environment, and Sustainability. Well, when I started my role on the third runway, I was the project manager for all the permitting that had to be done. And when the project was completed, I was the head of Aviation Environmental. Well, the primary reason for the third runway was because of delays that were being caused during bad weather situations when the cloud ceilings were low, which were creating huge backups in the air and planes would have to circle.
Prior to the third runway, there were the two runways, 16 left and 16 center. And because of inclement weather, we couldn't operate the two of them at the same time. So the best solution was to add a third parallel runway outboard, giving enough separation between the runways.
And the reason this matters is because in close parallel runways, you can have the planes come in quite close to each other and land together because the pilots can see each other. In bad weather, the FAA requires, since the cockpit is invisible, they have to be far enough away that navigational aids can guide the planes without any danger that they would accidentally hit each other. So we needed to separate the two approach streams more than the 800 feet that we currently had at that time between the runways. So by putting a runway out at 2,500 foot separation, we were able to achieve two parallel streams of approaches in bad weather. And that was the reason we needed to put it in there.
My name's Traci Goodwin, and I was a senior port counsel for the Port of Seattle from 1995 until 2019. I oversaw the litigation and permitting for the third runway project, and that also included all the other master plan projects. There were many different layers of approvals, both local, state, and federal approvals. Lots of different team members. We had groups that we were working with at the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, big project teams, both technical, planning, legal teams.
And the community opposition was huge. You couldn't watch the news for a week without seeing something about the opposition to that third runway. And it was all these headlines about, it was a years-long, decades-long legal fight against it.
Hi, my name is Nancy. I'm the director of the Highline Heritage Museum. And we are located in Burien, but we also representing the Highline region, which is exactly the same area as the school district, covering areas of Y Center, Burien, SeaTac, Nomadic Park, and a little bit of Des Moines. The relationship between the community and the airport has been an interesting one, and it started, from 1930s all the way up to today. And so I know that there is already some issues and frictions as to how do we improve transportation and how do we increase the size of the airport while in the center of the community.
As it was getting built, we really had to navigate a lot of the community concerns that came up. For example, underneath the third runway is a water drinking aquifer for the community here. So we had to make sure that all the soil put in was pure and clean. And then as it got hauled in, 17 million cubic yards. That was occurring at the same time that aircraft were coming and going. So a truck could come in about every 45 seconds, and on a busy day, an aircraft to be received or launched every 45 seconds. A lot of activity.
Not only did the fill in that truck have to be pristine, But the Puget Sound Air Agency realized this was a big opportunity to actually increase the market for clean trucks in the region. So they asked us, and we agreed that we were going to require the latest model truck that was available on the market, which people in this region didn't have. And over time, other contractors started buying the 1997 or newer equipment. And so I think we showed that we were willing, the port was willing to push the envelope on environmental requirements for the good of the community, even when it wasn't something that was absolutely required of us.
So when you look at what's happening today and the struggles in that infrastructure growing and thriving, and then you step back a little bit on the different issues in history, all the way from the third runway, the second runway, the transitions on the engines and technology. Back then, the engines were too loud, too big, to be against a really small little window shaking in the schools. And so there is a lot of historical emotions throughout the community in many different ways. But once again, it's not about being part of the problem, it's about being part of the solution.
People that are involved in environmental permitting would look at the third runway project and realize, boy, those guys really set the bar high, and that's where the bar stayed. So it was definitely precedent setting in terms of regulatory rigor in the region. There were water quality treatment techniques that we piloted on the third runway, use of organic filters. You know, we were the first huge construction projects that did a lot of temporary erosion and sediment control. And we had to treat that water on site before it could be discharged to the creek.
It was innovative. I mean, we set the precedent for the industry with respect to construction stormwater management. There was an emerging technology that utilized crab shells to help pull the sediment out of the water, and had only been done on a micro scale. And over the duration of the project, we treated over 650 million gallons of construction stormwater, and now it is an accepted industry practice.
It upped the challenge and upped the bar on pretty much everything the port did at the airport, from water to waste to air quality, habitat, the whole 9 yards.
History is history. History is our past. History, the lessons that we are embracing and going and learning from. But that's not where we're going to be staying. The thing is, okay, the situation is there now. What are the solutions? And for me, the solutions is about dialogue, talking, addressing, and really be creative. How do we meet the needs of a better infrastructure in our transportation in the region while protecting the community?
I think more than anything, it was listening. Understanding what the concerns were, but there had to have been mutual respect between the community and the port really to be able to ultimately succeed in the project. While I know that we didn't change everybody out there's mind, I think at the end of the day we proved that we were good for our word, and we delivered on what we had promised and exceeded really what we had promised.
By the end of the project, we had mitigated the environmental concerns, the clean water concerns. We kept the creeks going, didn't bury them. We tried to keep it open so it could be a salmon habitat zone in the end. We worked really hard with the community and tried to build more and more buffer areas. So the water reaching the sound now, after the third runway, is much cleaner than before. Well, in a way, the third runway promoted safety, because then the aircraft could have greater separations and the airfield could be greater controlled, so there wouldn't be incursions or collisions on the airfield. And it allowed the aircraft to spread out in the route coming in at the time. So there were positives about it also.
A new runway at SeaTac became a different kind of track today. Port of Seattle employees took part in a 5K or 10K walk run on the new third runway earlier today.
It was so wonderful to do that. It was a perfect sunny, cold winter day, and walking up and down the runway with various team members, and I knew it was the only time I'd get to walk on it, so it was really fun to do that. It was great. It's a great experience to have these planes landing next to us.
A lot of eager port employees who are ready to give back to the community, and that they're celebrating the completion of one of the biggest jobs in port history.
I thought of all the people that had probably had a hand in the project, because the project had been going on for over 20 years. It takes everything from the first surveyors to the planners to the environmental teams. And what most people don't realize is people downtown in the corporate are celebrating too, because every bill runs through the accounting system there. The insurance needs runs right through the finance department. To get enough staff to put on those kind of projects, you need human resources behind you. And the environmental team was based down there at that time too. It was an all-port event and probably the biggest, longest accomplishment to that time.
I think what I saw happen in the midst of the third runway was a greater willingness of the port to really think about the fact that we had to go above and beyond what was required. So I think that it set the groundwork, I think, for a lot of the sustainability initiative work that followed. I think the third runway was in a way the dawn of new cooperation with the community, but also a new setting the bar higher when it came to the port's environmental performance.